Hello, viewers. This is Dr. Qamar Cheema, and please do subscribe my channel, The New World. And today I have a wonderful guest for you people, Mr. Farah Adid. He is working in Acton Institute in the United States, and he's working on nationalism, religion. Uh, Thank you very much, Mr. Farah, for your time for my channel.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Mr. Farah, my question to you is obviously Pakistan got independence on the name of religion. So, where do you see Pakistan? Because in Pakistani politics, religion has so much value. The politicians, military, they have been using religion over the period of time. But it seems that once again, a new wave has come where religiosity has once again entered into the Pakistani politics. Where do you see the Pakistani nationalism? Do you see that there is any Pakistani nationalism, pure nationalism is there, or do you think that this is still mixed with the religion and it will continue to be mixed with the religion?
This is a very important question. And as per as the rise of religiosity, the rise of religiously inspired ideology is concerned, it is everywhere, almost everywhere across the world. There is like uprising, rise of religion and religiosity and faith-based politics. There are several reasons behind that, that why the recent rise of identity politics. Apart from religion, there are other identities too. Why is it so? But as far as the case of Pakistan is concerned, you rightly put it that Pakistan was actually created in the name of religion. So Pakistan, willingly or unwillingly, has much to do with religion, and particularly Islam. That there is a role of Islam. It has historically been an important factor in Pakistan's identity, foreign policy, national politics, and all that. Having said this, that the recent rise of religious politics in Pakistan is quite frightening. Uh, it is promoting a kind of an exclusive version of nationalism that is solely based upon religion, and it's like when I'm saying religion, it means some very particular extremist or orthodox interpretation of religion. Generally, as a researcher who works in the field of nationalism and identity politics, I do not think that religion can completely be delinked from nationalism. And there is nothing bad in that if nationalism and religion go hand in hand. Islam as a religion offers a lot to have a very inclusive sense of nationalism. So, I do not think that we need to de-link religion from politics or from nationalism or Pakistan's core identity. Second, I think uh, it is not possible, honestly speaking, because Pakistan is deeply rooted um, in the very idea of religion. Third, I think the recent trend is going to create a kind of hyper nationalism, which will have implications for our culture, for our democracy, and of course for rule of law, and at the end, Pakistan's complete like notion of identity. I'm not very much positive about the current wave of nationalism and politics in Pakistan. I would not blame any political party, but the way religion is being used is quite upsetting. That there is one interpretation of religion and it is being used against the political opponents, and when there is no need to do so, because there are several other points on which you can criticize either the government or the opposition. So to put it simply and precisely, I do not think that religion needs to be differentiated nationalism and we need a secular nationalism. I do not think so. But at the same time, we need to initiate debates about the role of religion in the formation of our nationalism. It can be inclusive, it can be more adaptive. We'll discuss later on in this discussion, I hope.
Mm. So, Mr. Farah, the important development in Pakistan is going that the subnationalism is increasing. For instance, you have heard about the Pashtun Tahaffuz movement. You have heard about the Baloch nationalism, and you have heard that even in Gilgit-Baltistan, although there is no political party that way which is talking of this sub-nationalism, but how do you think that why this sub-nationalism is taking roots in Pakistani politics, or do you find that this is natural because the federal government or the center is not paying attention to the miseries of the provinces, or do you believe that this sub-nationalism roots in centuries ago because the Pashtuns or the Baloch or the other groups they believe that they have a superior identity. So how do you see this sub-nationalism and the rise of sub-nationalism among the youth in Pakistan?
This is another interesting and very important question. I believe both interpretation, your explanations are valid. One, the center has been not able to accommodate different identities, and the other, yes, there is a sense of identity among Pashtuns and Balochs and Sindhis and all that. I do not think that this is bad to have a sense of identity. If someone is proud of being Pashtun, someone is proud of being Saraiki, someone is proud of being Baloch, there is no reason to question their identity or to let them know that you should not be proud of your identity. Like, let them be whatever they want to. The next thing is, why is Pakistan's national identity not shared? Because it was never shared. It, there has never been serious attempts to reconcile local identities with the collective unified idea of Pakistani nationalism. When people are not part of, if by people I mean different groups, when they are not part of creating a collective unified political identity, they will never own it. And that is one of the reasons that the unidimensionally defined Pakistani nationalism is not considered by these ethnicities in general, and particularly by the separatist groups, as a shared identity. They don't believe they belong to this identity. What they believe, on the contrary, is that this identity has been imposed on them with an intention to deprive them of their, one, local identities, two, of their political independence. So I think the rise of subnationalism in Pakistan should not be surprising for some institutions and political actors in Pakistan. Second, it should not be upsetting either. What we need to do and what we need to think is that we need to appreciate the very basic local identity of people. You cannot dictate someone to be a Sindhi or to be a Pakistani. They can be Sindhi as well as Pakistani at the same time. The very notion that when you claim to be a Pakistani, you have to give up on all your identities, that is problematic. And unfortunately, this has been happening in Pakistani popular media, popular cultural discourse that was tried to impose on the society, and unfortunately it backfired. It did not work.
But Mr. Farah, you have absolutely right that we can have these two identities; they can go side by side. But what if there is a transnational nationalism? That is where the challenge sometime emerges. For instance, in case of this Pashtun Tahaffuz movement, it was a challenge for the state. They believe that, for instance, that someone, for instance, from Afghanistan is pushing and raising up these sentiments. So, do you believe that when we have one state, but we have subnationalism, which is connecting its roots in some other place. So, how do you see that? Why this has happened, and how do you see that in international relations or in international law, when boundaries have been established, sovereignty is there, and this idea of nation state is there. So, how this subnationalism can move into this transnational nationalism? I'm just trying to get out of a lot from you because you have a lot of in-depth understanding of that. So, why do you think that? Do you think that there is some rationale behind that, or do you think that in this 21st century it's very difficult to go with this transnational nationalism?
This is very important. This is very tricky in Pakistan. Um, One, our focus on Pashtun nationalism and blaming Afghanistan I think it's overstated in Pakistan, and there is a reason behind that. Whenever you have external quote unquote enemies, they will always exploit your internal fault lines. And it is not just in the case of Pashtuns, like there are some groups and who are being supported intellectually, morally, politically by the external actors. The same thing is happening in Balochistan, and it is happening a little openly that they are even being funded by someone from outside Pakistan. And the question is that how do we deal with our people, with locals? Pashtuns have, honestly speaking, some very genuine grievances. Like they have some genuine demands, and what Pakistan needed at that time, that when there was the rise of PTM, Pashtun Tahafuz movement, there needed, and Pakistan did to an extent. I'm not sure if it was successful or not, but it was a genuine organic movement of Pashtuns studying in different universities of Pakistan. There were Pashtun youth from Lahore, from Islamabad, from Faisalabad. They were participating in those protests, and when we were sitting in Lahore and Islamabad and in other parts of Pakistan, and we were just denouncing the very basis, the very idea of their movement. It was painful for them. We needed, like, I'm not saying that there is no external support for such kind of movements. Of course it does. Even America does. Whenever they need to support someone, they do it. And whenever their foreign policy agenda is not to support someone, even they don't care about human rights. So it depends on their interest. So my opinion is that we need to engage and reconcile with Pashtuns rather than blaming them that they are getting support and they are getting funding. I'm not sure if it is true because some of Pakistani agency reports claim that it is happening. So rather than focusing on that, we need to focus on their real challenges, real issues, and we need to like get in touch with them.
I absolutely subscribe your theory that we need to look at their real issues, because since the real issues have not been addressed, so these grievances are there, and these grievances are deep into the society, which has actually come up with, as you're saying, this subnationalism, or people are believing that their previous or earlier identity was much better as the new identity, because it is not delivering, and it's not giving them whatever the due share is. That, so moving towards some religious side, over the period of time we have seen that international community is opening up to Israel, and we have seen that the Muslim world is basically opening up to the Israel. So how do you see that, for instance, President Biden is there in the Middle East, and there was a I2U2 leaders meeting where Israel, United Arab Emirates, India, and the Emiratis were sitting together, and they were finding solutions for global energy, for all that. How do you see that when you look at Pakistan over the period of time, the Muslim world has basically distanced itself from the Pakistani problems. For instance, the Muslim world doesn't pay attention to the Kashmir. So don't you think, or what do you think, that Pakistan has overrated religion in its politics, and religion has been misused by the Pakistan's authorities by keeping the Kashmir issue alive in the Muslim world? Because right now the Muslim world is not responding to Pakistan's SOS call for Kashmir. How do you see that?
This is important. I think this needs to be understood in Pakistan as well. I completely understand and agree with what you are saying, that the world is now, the Muslim world in particular, is very clear that your issues are not our issues. And this is very clear, and this is established now. What we have been trying in Pakistan is that we try to convince the Muslim world that our issues are your issues. For example, the case of Kashmir, it is almost over now. But in Pakistan, not only politicians but other institutions and other stakeholders are trying to keep the Kashmir issue alive. If you are sincere and if you are able to do something, you would have done it. Now there is a massive structural and population and all these kind of changes going on in Kashmir, and with the passage of time, they will be able to accommodate the even if there is uprising again in Kashmir. So the issues, uh, it's very hard to digest for Pakistanis, for those who have a very romanticized idea of Kashmir and the politics of Kashmir, and they would just simply denounce whatever I'm saying as a matter of faith because they have believed it will become part of Pakistan. Second thing is in Pakistan, it is very unfortunate, by the way, that we have never been able to determine the role of religion. You are absolutely right that it is generally overrated, and it is overrated. Now, of course, there is public support for the implementation of Sharia, of an Islamic State, and all that. But historically speaking, there have been political forces, there have been certain institutions that have been deliberately using religion to monopolize our power. So the cost is in front of us. We cannot, interestingly, this is interesting at the same time, very disappointing. We cannot have an open dialogue about the role of religion in Pakistani public sphere, in Pakistani politics, let alone whether it is show whether Islam should inform people's public opinion or not. We cannot even openly talk about that role, that what it should be, and that is the cost when you use religion as a tool for your petty political interest, and the results are in front of us, and that's very disappointing. I agree with you that it is overrated in Pakistan.
So, over the period of time, do you think that this idea of having an OIC is going to help the Muslim world for whatever unfinished issues are in the Muslim world, be it the Palestine or be it the Kashmir? Or do you think that the Muslim world need to engage with the West or need to engage with the global community by ignoring those issues which cannot be resolved? So, what do you think? How do you see this idea of OIC? Why it has been continuously failing over the period of time? Do you believe that the overall the power of Muslim world power of Muslim world has decreased, or do you believe that the issues are not that much relevant, or do you believe that those countries which had a control over either it is India over Kashmir or Israel over Palestine, they are too powerful to be managed? So, what do you see in that?
Very important. The OIC is ineffective because it is a representative body of unrepresentative regimes and governments. And we in Muslim world, we generally think that there is one, no need to engage with the West. Second, Western world is innocent. They probably have no idea about what is going on in Pakistan or in the rest of the Muslim world. So there is a lesson, and there a lesson needs to be learned for the Muslim world and for the West. One, if West is like we don't care about what is going on in the Muslim world, if they have an orthodox interpretation of religion and if they have hyper nationalism and there is terrorism, that's okay. We don't care about them. It's their problem. No, threat to freedom anywhere is a threat to freedom everywhere. So West has not just a moral responsibility, but a political obligation to uh, cooperate, help the Muslim world to democratize, protect freedom, human rights, and all that. And on the other hand, OIC, I personally do not see in near future will be effective or will be treated with due respect or due regard by the Western power, by the European Union, the United Nations, because everyone knows who is representing whom at OIC. Even it sometimes it is very difficult to get a resolution passed against India if there is something wrong going on in Kashmir. So Pakistan has to send its foreign minister to several Muslim majority countries to convince them that let's pass a resolution which actually has, honestly speaking, practically no significance. Even if it has some diplomatic face saving for some in Pakistan or for the rest of the world, but practically it is ineffective. So I do not personally think that the OIC will have any future in its present form, because we need to focus. I am someone who actually believes in uh, localized and organic and evolutionary changes. I believe until unless there is democracy, respect for human rights in Muslim world, then we will be able to talk to the Western world. My last point on this question: nobody is ignorant in the West about what is happening uh, in the Muslim world. What is the state of human rights? For example, in Pakistan, we generally argue and we demand that we need a very positive image in the West. You don't need to talk about negative about Pakistan. Okay, perfect. Sounds great. But the thing is, when a person is mobbed or lynched in Pakistan, New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, everyone reports that a person has been lynched because of some religious issues, and it was not established yet whether the person committed blasphemy or not. So, and this is across the Muslim world. There is gross violations of human rights. There's challenges to democracy. So, unless and until we fix these broader structural institutional issues, we won't have that much say in the in the world affairs.
Mm. Thank you very much, Mr. Farhadi, for helping us to understand that these complex issues of nationalism and how Islam is mixed with this politics, and how the Muslim world, which has been using religion, as you mentioned, that for keeping the monopoly over power, Islam or the religion has been used, and how what needs to be done. Obviously, this is we have mentioned as well that. But at the same time, a stronger support is needed for our solutions, where we need to empower the people. Because if people are not empowered, they are not given their identity, they are not given their due share in terms of identity, and in terms of power as well, in terms of financial power as well. Obviously, the issues will remain same. Thank you very much, Mr. Farhadi, for your time and for your valuable comments.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.